Hello and welcome to the Drawing Room Experts. This is Zaib. Today's episode is something that I've been looking forward to for a while, and I've been trying to plan for even longer. So it's just going to be a conversation. I think that's how I would sum up this one, because it's going to vary from different things that I want to talk to our guest about, and then also something that we've already talked about for a long time, like on our WhatsApp conversation. So I would like to welcome Nikhil to the podcast. Hey, Nikhil, how's it going?
Good. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course, of course. I know you're pretty excited for this one, and you've been waiting for, I think, a good part of a year to get on the podcast, right?
Yes,
As you
absolutely.
know, that's been a long queue, so you were like at the back of the.
I was
um,
happy to wait.
how's East Coast treating you so far?
Yeah, so
Um,
far so good.
Good, you like it?
Um,
I mean, you've
like
lived
it
there,
so
right?
far.
You've lived
I've
there.
lived, I've lived in Maryland, so it's like homecoming of sorts for me.
That's good. That's good. How long you lived in Maryland? You said a couple of years, right?
I lived there a couple of years. Then I actually moved around the globe and came back to Maryland.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about that. I mean, just to give a little bit of a context to the people listening or watching. Um, Nikhil is a truly multinational person. He is an Indian by birth. I'm assuming you're born and raised in India, right? You
I
didn't
was.
you okay? You're born and raised in India. Then he found himself in Australia for, I believe, your studies, right?
Yes.
You went for your higher education to Australia. Then you lived there. You studied there. You worked there or lived there enough to gain a passport, and then you find yourself here in the United States, where, as you know, Nikhil just mentioned that he's lived in the East Coast. I know him from his time over in the West Coast here in the Bay Area, and yeah, now he's been like, how long has he been in the US now for you?
Uh, 7 years now.
How does how do you like, so there's so many things that we usually talk about. I wanted to start it off with this identity crisis, right? So one thing that I really I can't understand from some of the expats here, like Indian, Pakistani, right? People who are born here, there always seems to be some sort of a there always seems to be some sort of um, an identity crisis, right? Like they don't know how to align themselves. They don't know if they're Pakistani Indian, if they're like American, or any of that stuff. How do you see that for you, since you literally have so many boats that you can be on?
Yeah, I mean, it is an interesting question, but the answer is quite clear, and I don't quite. I mean, to be entirely honest, I still consider myself Indian for all practical purposes.
Fir bhi dil hai
Getting an
Hindustani.
Yeah, I mean, the politics in India matters because it, and the funny part or unfortunate part is it does not really matter, but it still matters because you are invested in it and you are thinking that you are out of it. Why do you keep thinking about what's
Right.
happening in India? But I don't have the similar feeling for Australian politics for that matter. So getting an Australian passport was more of a convenience. And to be a citizen of a first world country and to get the opportunities of coming here, for example, for my kids and stuff. So
Right.
still identify myself as an Indian.
But do you wonder about, I mean, you said you didn't indulge yourself into Australian politics. Was that like a conscious decision, or you did know, I mean, do you know anything what's going on in Australia? I mean, if I were to ask you like local politics, the whole dynamics of it, do you know enough to at least talk about it?
Yeah, I can have a conversation about it, but
So you did
it's
kind of indulge yourself, like you didn't like totally separate yourself from Australia. You were like, I don't care about this country. I just need the passport. Don't even get me
no.
excited started
And
about
the
the
reason for that
politics.
is, I mean, funny enough, I've got a very funny life. The reason for that is I've never voted in India, but I've actually voted like in my life in Australia.
Oh
So
wow.
I have been involved. So that election really opened my eyes about who I wanted in power and
Right,
what
right.
my,
So you did
you
like
know,
indulge yourself, which because
oh yeah,
one of the things that I criticize expats here in the US about is their indulgence in local politics. I have so many Pakistani uncles that I know that will talk to you until the cows come home and beyond about what's going on in Pakistan.
right,
They will schedule their lives in a manner where at the end of each day they will find time to just watch news channels in Pakistan and catch up with like talk shows and all of that and be very much aware and have an opinion, an active opinion, and you can talk to them about for days. um but when you talk to them about, okay, what's happening here in the local politics, local arena, the only thing that probably they would know is like who's the president, and they're all bad and they're the same, blah blah blah. And even if they know about local politics, they'll always think about, okay, what's better for Pakistan, right? कि मैं बाइडन को वोट दूं तो इज इट गोइंग टू बी गुड फॉर पाकिस्तान, मैं ट्रम्प को वोट
right,
दूं तो
right,
इज इट गुड, तो वो जो होता है ना पर्सपेक्टिव आपका, हमेशा यू लुकिंग आउट फॉर दैट कंट्री टू, इवन इफ यू आर वोटिंग हियर, आपके दिमाग में
yeah,
होता है कि विल दिस गाय बी गुड फॉर पाकिस्तान.
India or Pakistan,
तो
yeah,
तो um, वो मेरा एक बड़ा एक वो प्रॉब्लम रहता है यहाँ पे लोगों के साथ, क्योंकि आई मीन इवन इफ आई मीन अगर पहले अव्वल तो लाइक आई डोंट एग्री कि एनी यूएस president is good or bad for any country, right? That's the thing that
exactly,
that's a submissive behavior that we might have, because we think, yeah, that country, if they get a good leader, then we'll be happy. No, that doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. You need
absolutely,
to get your own good leaders. And then also I think it's a very passive way and a very thankless way to look at where you're living, because you're paying taxes here, you're working here, your children live here, they're going to school here. And then despite all of that, you pretty much separate yourself from your immediate environment and kind of invest yourself emotionally and physically and mentally to an environment that you left willingly,
by choice,
by
yeah,
choice. Nobody pushed you out. I mean, you left by choice. I mean, even if there were circumstances that kind of pushed you out, but you still left. So I still find it really hard when people just don't separate themselves out of it. I understand it's an emotional connection, which is why I was wondering, like, how did you, when you found it in yourself to vote, for example, in Australia, was that like a conscious decision, or were you like, okay, I'm always politically aware, be it India or Australia, you just happen to find yourself in an Australian environment, so you basically use that and basically express your political opinion?
no, I mean, it kind of coincided with me getting my citizenship around that time as well. So it was all fresh in my mind. I was all a new Australian, and there's that
Right.
excitement to get a new passport and having a new allegiance. So in that sense, I started researching about what sort of politics there is in Australia and
Parties
what
and
sort of
stuff.
parties there are, and who I would like to be the next leader of Australia. So it was pretty informed by that stage. So, like I said, it was my first election as well. So I
But
had done my homework.
this is not the first time, although you didn't you this was not probably the first time you searched for Australian parties, right?
Oh,
Not
no,
that far.
yeah,
But yeah,
you're right.
but yeah, I mean, it's an interesting point you make, and we've had this conversation, so many times, and I wanted to bring this to a record as well, because I think it's a very valuable conversation. Allegiances, you mentioned the word allegiance. What defines allegiance in your head? Do you think, um, is it by choice? Is it by birth? And if, for example, you're an Indian and then you get a nationality of America or Australia or England, does that change your allegiance? So, I mean, how do you define allegiance when it comes to nations and citizens and all of that? Like, what goes in your head?
So yeah, I mean, it leads. It's like a follow-on to what you said earlier. Ki, some people, and including me, for at some stages, you refuse to leave behind India or Pakistan or whatever,
Right.
and you keep thinking about that, and that in a way hinders your life in your current state. So I completely agree that people should take more efforts to be there and now wherever they are, and
Right.
try to form local allegiances. And to answer your question, I think it is. I have no answer to that. I mean, there is no logical answer. Is what I'm trying to say. It's what your heart wants, or what I mean. I have no explanation, to be honest. I mean,
So,
it's just that something which you feel and you cannot explain.
in other words, can you be an Australian citizen and be loyal 100% to India?
No, you cannot be. I mean, you should not be as well.
You
And
should. Okay, that's a good point. Yeah, you shouldn't
you
be
should
then.
not be as well. I mean, but I think uh, as you experience other countries and other ways of lives, I think you try and think for yourself whether this blind allegiance is really the way to go, and you try to take the better things in the places where you are living currently, and then you start to question yourself a little bit more, or at least you should.
Right. And we've had, as you know, we've had
Yeah,
several conversations around this topic around, I mean, our
absolutely.
personal allegiances, quote unquote allegiances for me,
Uh,
India and
uh,
Pakistan.
Let me ask you this. I mean, you come across as this rational person who, I mean, you have just said about how you should not have allegiances and all that. But when I talk to you and when I see your messages, they come across as a strong Pakistani, like a person who is like a Pakistani in his
Right, right.
heart.
What you would
So
expect a Pakistani to say, essentially.
right, exactly. So what is your how do you define that? How do you
I
what
think,
is your idea?
first of all, I mean, I would like to think that my rationality overshadows my allegiances, because at the end of the day, I am a person of rational. I try to think, I try to be a person of rationality and logic. Okay. If that coincides with supporting whatever's happening in my country, or whatever opinion that Pakistan has for any issue, on any issue, if that supports it, then great. But that's not, I don't like to think that that's how I approach it. I don't like to
Oh,
say, okay, acha, Pakistan, for example, Pakistan says कि Kashmir is there. Let's general सी बात करते हैं. Kashmir is theirs. तो अब I'm not going to find logic to support that argument, right? I will try to find what the logic says, and says, if 2 plus 2 is 4, so whatever side is saying 4, I support that side. See?
got it.
So agar 2 plus 2, India says 5, I wouldn't say no, they're wrong because I'm Pakistani. I would say, hey, dude, I mean, it just doesn't add up. That's how I try to think. But you're right. It's a subconscious thing. Like, we've all grown up in our backgrounds, and it's a tribal thing. We still have in our DNAs and our way we've been brought up. We still have that tribal instincts where we support our sides, and we're like, green till we bleed, or blue till we bleed, or whatever, right?
Right.
um, um, तो वो सब चीजें होती हैं, and I understand that. और वो प्रॉब्लम भी नहीं है, देखो. Being partial to your own country and being patriotic, as we've had this discussion too, that's not the problem, in my opinion. I think the problem is not knowing that you are that person,
Right.
right? The problem is that not knowing that you're doing this because you have some blind allegiances, you have some blind alleys where you've been, and you don't see reason, right? As long as I can say, ki, hi yaar, you know what, I'm saying this because it's an emotional opinion, then yeah, it's fine. But as long as I'm not saying that this is not an emotional opinion, I actually mean it, no. And when in reality it's an emotional opinion, that's the problem. तो वो सब चीजें वो तो होता है, लेकिन I think it's very important. और मैं ये clarify भी करना चाहूंगा तुम्हारे साथ, like, I don't bash people who are patriotic. You can love your country, and you can be, you can adore your country, you can have great things to say about your country. It's completely fine, it's normal. I do the same. But I think the cost shouldn't be truth. ये मेरा एक mantra है कि
Agreed.
whatever is true, उसको ना छोड़ो. Like, I if for example, अभी a couple of days ago, Pakistani foreign minister was on a US media channel during an interview, and the interviewer asked him about the Uyghurs in West China, who are being persecuted and all of
Acha.
that stuff. Uyghur Muslims. So the interview asked him that you're very vocal about what's happening in Gaza or Kashmir. Why don't you be vocal? Have the same opinion on this crisis, which is happening right in your neighborhood. The only difference is that it's being done by people that you work with or your allies. Um, it's a fair question. So in that instance, I would be like, yeah, they're right. They're right. We're being we're being our outrage is selective. Like, we are not outraged about certain things, and because we have
Right.
political affiliations or ambitions as opposed to other things. And that's not just Pakistan, it's here in the US, right? US is pretty vocal about what's going on in China because they want to pressurize them, but they're now pretty vocal about what's happening in Kashmir because
Or
they can't,
Palestine, or
or Palestine, right? Because they can't pick a side there. They can't even look seem to pick a side because they have political ambitions and you know uh, um, uh,
different considerations.
considerations, relationships
Yeah.
in the region that they can't really break. So that's how it works. But that shouldn't mean कि यार यही बस ये norm है and we should all live by that. No, I think the important thing is where Pakistan is wrong. I am more than happy to admit, and even sometimes I go overboard in admitting them to my fault. But I think um, some of the discussions that we've had about this is around the fact that how do you separate yourself from that emotional connection. So I know you were kind of the person who has been emotionally involved with a lot of things India does and says, and um, have you find it easier now to separate yourself, or are you working towards that? Like, how do you do that, if you do that, or do you feel like it's not required? I mean, if I'm invested in India emotionally, then so be it. I don't care about what's true and what's not. I just want to be emotionally Indian.
No, I've not had a thought about it, to be honest, about what I really want to do. But you're right. I mean, I've been trying consciously to integrate myself more to where I live and not be so invested in India emotionally. And my investment in India is purely emotional because I have absolutely nothing to gain from whether they're right or wrong that
Right.
way. So I don't know why. I mean, I've been trying to cut down on getting worked up about various things. Like, for example, Prime Minister Modi, I've got strong opinions about him. And when someone praises him, then I get all worked up because I might not agree with everything, and I start arguing. But then I realize he's not going to pay my bills in the end. I have to do my own work, and I've decided to slowly cut down on my emotional investment from India consciously.
Here's a scenario. You're sitting in a workplace here in the US, right? And someone in your team or in your office starts rightfully or wrongly bashing India. What's your knee-jerk reaction? Do you become defensive, or do you listen to
No,
what the merits of that discussion is?
I try to. I try to. It's never. I don't go all ballistic and like go defensive. I never do that.
कि यार
You know that, right? I mean,
हाँ, no, exactly, because believe it or not, sometimes that happens with me. I go like emotionally defensive, and I
yeah,
try to find rationale behind my defensiveness, which is the
yeah,
worst thing that I feel I could do, because then I'm trying to bend the truth for my own ways, right? So I always try and be very conscious whenever that type of discussion happens. Or जो मेरा पहला reaction है ना, I always try and question that. I'm like, am I saying this because I'm emotionally defensive about this, about my hometown, or am I literally just like this? Whatever they said is not true. ठीक है, तो or same goes with religion in my matter, right? So whenever there's a religious discussion and I feel like there's someone is saying completely off the off the scale, I would my knee jerk reaction would be to be defensive, and that's what I want to personally control from my reactional side as a human being, is that and I speak about this on the podcast a lot. I've told you about this numerous times. Always I want to be married and linked to the truth. Once you do that, it's kind of like it's very uplifting, and it's very freeing. It's a very freeing experience where you don't feel
it
tied
is.
up. You don't feel like, oh man, अब यार इसने मोदी को बोल दिया, now I need to defend him,
Yeah,
right? और इसने अगर इंडिया को कुछ बोल दिया तो अब मुझे आई नीड टू डिफेंड इंडिया. तो बड़ा एक ना एंग्शियस स्टेट होती है in my head. It's a very anxious state. And to anyone who's listening, when you start defending your country for whatever reason or no reasons at all, it's a very anxious state to be in, because you're worked
all
up,
the
you're
time.
emotional, you're like, "Abhi yaar, I need to make a point to prove him that he's wrong because other people are listening, maybe unko galat impression jaye." No, relax, listen. People are going to think what they're going to think. If whatever the person is saying is true, then because once you relate yourself with a party, and then whatever the party does, you will have to defend. ठीक है.
Right.
So just my relationship with Imran Khan is exactly the same. I don't relate with him 100% all the time. That's why I find it very easy and liberating to criticize him,
Right.
because and people also can't come to me and say, hey, ये क्या कर रहा है तेरा बंदा, क्या कर रहा है देखा तुमने, because they know कि यार ये वो वाला नहीं है, कि यार ये जो इमरान खान डू और डाई वाला चक्कर नहीं करेगा ये.
Right.
If Imran Khan's going to mess up, I'll be the first one to admit and call it out. So I'm not married to the idea of Imran Khan. I'm just married to whatever he's doing, and on merit, I will see if that's right or wrong.
Very well said. And I mean, हमारे culture में to admit that you're wrong or to question someone is not very highly considered, and so not many people do that introspection, which should be done. And I feel that I might like a particular person or a particular party, but I can still criticize them when they're wrong, or when
Right.
I feel they're wrong. I'm not like 100%. And also wanted to go back to your earlier comment, and when I was all trying to be take the high road and all. But when you ask me about the whether I have a rational reaction, so let me qualify that. When and I'm getting better at it, but when say it's a comment that a criticism or a comment that comes from you as a Pakistani, then my first reaction is to get defensive, unfortunately. So it's not something which I take kindly, and I have not taken kindly in the past. So I'm working on that, and we have had conversations to that effect. But it's not easy. It's not the natural state of.
Trust me, yeah, it isn't. But मैंने जैसा बोला, it's very liberating once you in your head you qualify everything with the truth. You're like, you know what, I am just with the truth, and truth is the ultimate power in my head. I'm like, yeah, truth, यार एक चीज right है, एक चीज wrong है, right? So बड़ा easy हो जाता है, and trust me, it takes time. I agree with you. I think it's an exercise. So you always have to like practice and practice and practice. But it does become easier when you are like your allegiances are with the truth. अच्छा, मुझे एक और चीज बताओ. Like another thing that we've had discussions about on this type of topic has been, I wanted to understand the Indian mindset. ठीक है. In my limited experience and with interacting with Indians, even in the Bay Area, I mean, I've interacted with some, not as much as I would have liked. मेरा जो इंटरेक्शन रहा है वो या जो मुझे बाहर से देखने से मिलता है, it's always been like there's certain arrogance that goes with being an Indian, especially when they talk about Pakistan. ठीक है. तो where do you think that, I mean, if I'm right, where do you think that arrogance comes from, and why do you think that's the case? Is this just thumping arrogance, or is it there is legitimate reason behind it?
It's a very deep question, and I'm not sure if I'm qualified to answer it, but I can take it for particular areas, right? So, for example, cricket, when it comes to cricket, and I'm not talking about the results, because still, even now, Pakistan's results are better.
Right.
But the whole controlling thing that has come with cricket, and the money that is associated with it has given certain type of arrogance to India. And believe it or not, most of Indians, or at least in my opinion, Indians think that cricket is the life. I mean, that is it, basically. So that is one area which I think there is a lot of arrogance. And there is a talk show called Sports Tak, and the way they talk about Pakistani players and Pakistani anchors in general, it's very, cringeworthy, even
Condescending.
as a condescending, very condescending. On the other hand, when I listen to the Pakistani shows, they are very respectful. And even
तो
when
ऐसा
I
क्या
have,
रीजन है? लाइक मुझे समझना है कि इस एरोगेंस का रीजन क्या है, क्यों जैसे मैं तुमसे बोला भी है बहुत सी बात, बहुत
पता नहीं है
मरतबा
यार,
कि यार
पता
कि
नहीं है मेरे को।
is it because you guys really have taken the whole idea of being an advanced country up to your head? Because you're not, right? You know that. I think, I hope Indians realize that there's still a third world country like us.
Yes.
Yes, there might be differences between how advanced or how much growth India has achieved versus what how much growth Pakistan has achieved, but है तो उसी bucket के अंदर ना, like run, we are running the same race, we're in the same field. We're not like
No, and you give Indians too much credit. I think what has happened is like
I do.
few of the leaders, there is a lot of herd mentality in India. So what the leaders would like you to believe, people believe also. So वो भी हुआ है, and I really don't know the reason. I mean, yes, we are not advanced at all, and there is like long way to go. But I think we are so sick of being this third world country that we have created this narrative about ourselves, in some way. I think that, yeah, we are doing well, and at least we are not as bad as Pakistan. That's a
Yeah.
narrative, at least. I don't know how that has come about, and like I said, I'm not qualified to answer that.
No,
But
it's not. It's not. Yeah, even I'm not qualified to talk about so many things that I've talked upon this podcast,
no,
which
but
is why
you
it
asked
is
a very fair question, because it's like, and as a Pakistani, I think you must find it very irritating when, like, you must be thinking,
not as a
"तुम्हारी औकात
Pakistani.
क्या
I
है?"
think
But
no, yeah, but no, yeah, you're right. Maybe it's because I'm a Pakistani, but I think particularly as I separate myself from Pakistan as like a very chest thumping Pakistani,
yeah,
even outside of it, I find it really, uh, it's just confusing to me. I'm like, okay, because the Gora population likes you more, for example, or they're traveling India more. There's this certain exotic
probably that is it.
treatment that India gets in the media. Have you guys really taken that to your head seriously?
Must
क्योंकि
have,
ऐसा
must have.
क्योंकि ऐसा ही लगता है ना कि उनको लगता है कि क्योंकि यहाँ पर गोरे आ रहे हैं तो we must be advanced now कि तभी गोरे आ रहे हैं ना. No, goras are there because they like to see how poor people live. They want to feel good about themselves, and that's how on a subconscious level they're doing. Not everyone, but most of them, where they come to India or Pakistan even, and they spend time with the indigenous local people. They're not doing
Exactly.
probably doing this out of the goodness of their heart, but I think deep down it's because they also want to feel good about themselves. It's like, hey, देखो हम कितने अच्छे हैं, हम लोग अच्छे लोग
And
नीचे
and
लोग
they
सब
want to
बैठते हैं.
emphasize कि तुम अभी थर्ड वर्ल्ड कंट्री ही
हाँ
हो,
हाँ हाँ हाँ,
उनको वो
एग्जैक्टली.
जताना है. अभी
जताना
तुम
भी
ये
होता है, हाँ.
पैंडेमिक के बारे में देखो कि द पिक्चर्स दैट वर कमिंग आउट ऑफ इंडिया,
हम्म.
whatever Indians did, I'm not saying कि they did the right thing and there was no social distancing, but the population and the proportion is that much higher. But people did the same stupid things, stupid mistakes over here in the US as well. It's
Oh
just
yeah,
that there is like more space and less people over here. And in India,
space is
there are
less
like
and people more.
people are more. So the effect is that magnified that much. But the pictures that were coming out of India, sort of, you could feel that these people get some sort of delight in showing that image of India, that you
हाँ,
you are
ये
still
तो
underdeveloped. So you ज्यादा उछलो मत तुम
कुछ
लोग
लोग मत
ऐसे.
क्या है
हाँ.
कि वो आई एग्री विद यू, आई थिंक. लेकिन उस आड़ में ना बहुत सारे लोगों ने इन इंडिया, आई थिंक ऑल्सो they didn't take the criticism how they should have.
They never
They
do.
again, they become defensive, right? कि, oh नहीं नहीं नहीं, तुम इसलिए बोल रहे हो क्योंकि तुम्हारी नीयत खराब है. When yeah,
हाँ.
people are dying, yes, but तुम इसलिए कह रहे हो क्योंकि you want to make us look bad. You know people like that in the Indian media space who are constantly showing like stats about how many people have died in Italy versus in it. I mean, come on, like really, let's be
Accept it.
honest, accept it, right? हाँ, फिर
Yeah.
बाद में उस पर आप बात कर सकते हैं कि उसके पीछे इंटेंशन क्या थी, बट जो चीज है वो तो है ना यार. अब वो उसके पीछे जो भी
नहीं
बोले.
यार, इंडिया में ऐसे
um,
नहीं चलता. लाइक यू, वंस यू एडमिट योर मिस्टेक, यू आर गॉन.
तो वही तो मसला है ना यार, नेशनलिज्म. मैं
ये
तुम्हें चीज
मसला
कहता
है.
हूँ कि नेशनलिज्म और जो पेट्रियोटिज्म का जो ये एक एक्सट्रीम वर्जन है नेशनलिज्म,
या,
दैट्स द प्रॉब्लम इन माय ओपिनियन. आई थिंक that's
एब्सोल्युटली
why
इट
people
इज.
become so they don't want to accept or talk about the
ब्लाइंड.
truth. They're blind. Exactly, they're blind. um एक और चीज, like you mentioned cricket, I think one thing I also wanted to ask you was how did you guys get so good? How, I mean, I was just reading somewhere, you guys have like 2 different squads now.
Yeah.
How did that happen? And always people in the Pakistani media talk about कि उनका इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर अच्छा हो गया है, लाइक डोमेस्टिक क्रिकेट का ये वो. मुझे नहीं समझ में आता कि क्या ऐसा हुआ क्या है, लाइक डू यू नो हुआ क्या एक्चुअली, कि या तुम भी सिर्फ लाइक कि लाइक व्हाट हैपेंड कि इतना सारा टैलेंट तुम लोगों के पास निकल के आना शुरू हो गया.
सी मेरे को लगता है आईपीएल का बहुत बड़ा क्रेडिट है इसमें. सो इट्स द फैक्ट दैट the scouts are going to the local most areas and trying to find that special talent, the
क्यों
freak
क्यों
talent.
पहले क्यों नहीं कर रहे थे?
पहले इतना पैसा नहीं था, अभी प्रोफेशनलिज्म ज्यादा आया, and all these like Ambani's and all these guys are into it and they're there to win.
उनका क्या
So
फायदा है यार, उनका क्या, फॉर एग्जांपल अगर मैं अंबानी हूँ, मेरा तो ये होगा ना कि यार जस्ट बाय द बेस्ट प्लेयर इन द वर्ल्ड एंड विन द लीग, और फिर उसके साथ में थोड़े बड़े जो एक्स इंडियंस या ऑन द फ्रिंज इंडियंस में उठा लूं मैं, यानी कि इंडियन ए टीम से कोई उठा लूं या इससे उठा लूं, तो आई शुड बी फाइन, राइट? मेरे दिमाग में एज अ बिजनेसमैन शायद ये चले. What is in their head that says no, I'm actually going to look for talent and find them and expose them to this great brand that we've created and then turn them into a superstar? Like, explain to me how like वो चीज कैसे हो रही है, वो चीज क्यों हो रही है?
again, I mean, even if they pay for the best players, there is a limit because there are like 7 other teams bidding for the same players. And foreign players 4 ही खेल सकते हैं. So the bulk of the team has to be Indian
Local.
And local. Or so for that reason, they have to build a strong core, and they have to make sure that they try and find out people. So now, even like in the 80s or the 70s, people were like, no, we have to complete our graduation first. Cricket side mein hua to hua. So they were not truly professionals. But now, गरीब से गरीब बच्चा भी, they can see, you know what, अगर मेरा लग गया ना, तो मैं कहाँ पहुंच जाऊंगा because of
At least
IPL.
IPL तो खेल लूंगा. हाँ.
IPL तो खेलूंगा, then at least it brings me in the spotlight. And then you underestimate the value of like playing in front of big crowds because of IPL and rubbing shoulders with the greats of the game, like AB de Villiers. If he takes someone under his wings, so and I think that will happen with PSL as well. I'm pretty confident that it will happen. I mean, first 6 years of IPL or 7 years, whatever, people were actually blaming IPL for drain of talent. India's performance went down because of IPL.
Okay.
And people started saying they don't care about anything, they only care about money. But slowly it changed. And I think that always happens because the franchises are so professional. There is no, they only want to win, basically. And they try and hunt new. So I think IPL has a big role to play in India's resurgence in cricket, I think.
अच्छा, तो you think
it will happen to you guys as well?
I hope so, because क्योंकि मैं थोड़ा सा ना हमेशा वो रहता हूँ, inquisitive रहता हूँ पाकिस्तान को लेके, क्योंकि whenever we have everything on our plate, that's the time when we mess it up. तो I'm always like, you know what, कर लें यार, अब तो मैं ज़्यादा सोचता नहीं उस बारे में. तो ये बड़ा एक interesting वो होता है, dynamic होता है. We talked about cricket, we talked about you know, patriotism, nationality, like all of that stuff. Is there anything that you would like to say to people who are listening, at least because predominantly Pakistanis might be listening to this, that you feel like would bridge the gap between their understanding about you and vice versa?
I don't know how, I mean, that's a big question.
Loaded question.
Yeah, I've got a good relationship with Pakistanis generally, and I'm
to a fault.
Partly
I think.
because
some people think you are an agent.
Yeah, no, it's partly because I'm fascinated by Pakistan. I would like to visit Pakistan one day. There is a lot of history to our countries, and I feel that there is no reason we cannot coexist like US and Canada do. I mean, yes, whatever differences we have had, it's not so much that they cannot be resolved. And I'm hopeful, optimistic that in future we do have such a relationship that we can just go over to each other's country freely, and you know,
and keep our differences intact. We can still have
keep our differences.
Yeah,
keep our rivalries. Like
exactly.
I've actually made a comment like YouTube पे मैंने देखा कि Michael Vaughan was ribbing the Aussies about losing to India's third 11. So I thought that was such a healthy conversation to have. I mean, imagine Wasim Akram doing that to India. You know, I mean, I would welcome such a level of conversation if it ever
Exactly.
happens, if it reaches. So that's a great thing. So in England and Australia, they hate their guts on the field, but they're not like they don't hate the English
Each
or they
other.
don't hate each other. So
I think
I
Pakistan,
think
India में भी ऐसे ही, right? Pakistani जो players हैं या Indian players हैं, they don't hate each other. I don't think so. I would like to think they're actually
players not,
cordial.
but the fans do.
Fans
Fans
do,
hate
yeah,
them,
yeah. Fans do. Like
like
fans to
Javed.
India. I know fans to India, Pakistan के भी England, Australia के भी kind of like on the hatred
Yeah,
front
they
होता है.
hate. I mean,
But players, I think they're very
they are
cordial,
pretty
right?
cordial. Yeah.
तो
So
वो चीज़ अगर रेप्लिकेट हो जाए एटलीस्ट बोर्ड्स के अंदर ना, बोर्ड्स अगर कोडियल बन जाए ना, गवर्नमेंट चाहे जो भी करे, अनफॉर्चुनेटली बोर्ड्स आर ऑल लाइक रन बाय गवर्नमेंट्स एंड इन्फ्लुएंस्ड बाय
run by
गवर्नमेंट.
governments in our part of the
वो
world.
तो वो थोड़ा सा जो है ना, वो चीज़ बड़ा एक वो बन जाती है. Anyway, again, thank you for your time, Nikhil. I know this has been, I had so many things to talk to you about, but time check. But we'll definitely continue this for another time. And
Great.
yeah, really appreciate your time, man. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you. My pleasure.